Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a September 19th edition of the MSP Initiative MSP Talk. Gonna get some housekeeping done, and then we'll go into the good stuff. And here we go. So this session is being recorded like every other session we've ever done. You will find it afterwards on mspinitiative.com. Once you learn how to spell or Google the spelling of initiative, you will figure out how to get to this page. So go to sessions. There'll be a podcast and video format of all of these sessions, including this one. So pick whichever fits best for you. We thank everybody that came out to Community Minds in Denver in August. So about a month ago. Was very successful, super education based. That's what we thought was the best way forward post Channel Strong Tour. We are going to plan a couple of these in 2024. Stay tuned. We're in the planning phases right now. But thank you for everyone that was a part of that. We thought that was super successful. We have 2 more block parties scheduled for this year. We started with like 5 or 6 separate events, and here are the last 2 in Florida. Surprise! So if you're headed to DattoCon in like, I don't know, 2 weeks or so, the second night of DattoCon in Miami, and go to dattocon.com and check it out. We will be holding an after party. Also, we call those community block parties. So it's going to be at the Hard Rock on the Water, October 3rd, 10 through close. We are going to be transporting people back and forth to the conference hotel should you be going to DattoCon. There are 3 of them. But if you're in South Florida and you just want to stop by, you're an MSP, absolutely no cost for you to register, which you can do here on the landing page on mspinitiative.com under community block parties. You'll see the 2 block parties here. I have a bunch of our co-sponsoring vendors here that are helping making this happen. Thank you very much to them. So that is Miami. The second and very last one, and the big one to blow out the year, is in Orlando this year, working in conjunction with IT Nation. So on November 8th at Icon Park in Orlando on International Drive, can't miss it, big Ferris wheel. We are taking over half that park. We're doing a community block party there, 9 p.m. to 2 a.m. Last year, we brought in All American Rejects. This year, we're bringing in maybe not 1, not 2, but 3 radio recognizable bands, believe it or not. We have not announced them yet. We're like this close. So stay tuned. But we are very excited about this one, as we were last year. Last year, we had like 2,200 people register to come to this thing. So it was a blowout, and we're hoping to do the same again this year. So definitely pre-register. Again, you can see registration options on the landing page. Don't miss it. It'll be worth your while. Same comment as before. If you happen to just be in Orlando because you just like, Disney World or Universal, or just happen to live in the area and you're an MSP, come on by, absolutely free. But you do have to register, because that's how the cookie crumbles. We have some community offers. These are just companies that have put out special offers for the community. Feel free to stop by and check those out. And lastly, our industry calendar, which is, believe it or not, I've gotten already a couple dozen dates for 2024 that haven't made it into this calendar yet. But we promise to keep on feeding the calendar here so that you can figure out what's going on. I will warn you, though, that in 2023, just here in the US, not including Canada, not including international like Europe and Australia and New Zealand and all these other places. So the US had approximately 230-ish channel events. And so that means that if you really wanted to be out there multiple times per week, even, you could be somewhere. Choose wisely. All of that being said, those are all the housekeeping items. Welcome to September 19th, which we're now a couple weeks in the football season. So, no Eagles gear on today, but where my, affiliation lies. You can just follow me on social media. It's pretty clear. And this is conference season. No question. We're here. A lot of it's going on. The big ones all seem to hit right in this September, October, November theme. Hopefully, we've heard from a couple of different people that, do the airports go back to a mask thing? Does any of this COVID stuff come back? Who knows? I'm hoping not. We all know how crazy that was, the first time around. So let's hope that doesn't throw a wrench into things. But we are here, and yeah, I'm curious to see how many people do come out. It's usually very, very busy. Today we bring back, I said now a few times now, but hey, like technology is always ebbing and flowing, so no problem. Bring back Chip Reaves, formerly, like may not go down the entire story. You can go back and rewatch the last couple podcasts, but formerly of computer troubleshooters, right? Like the parent, big guy that started, all of the franchise, kind of movements. And then now Bigger Brains. How you doing today, Chip?
I'm good. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, like technology, I feel like there's no end in sight, Chip. And it just definitely is ebbing and flowing. Just, every once in a while, I take a look at like current events. And the one that is like definitely noticeable because, made the news, right, is, the MGM, so hotel and casinos, effectively got, like a social engineering attack, right? Like we always talk about all of these cool security tools and multiple overlapping technologies and not one size fits all, no silver bullet, yada, yada, yada. And like there is enough software companies at every event that you've ever been to selling security technologies and the services around them that like you could definitely max out your credit card. That being said, this one was a little bit different because from what I gather, and there's plenty to read on, you can just Google it, MGM hack or cyber or whatever you want to call it. Somebody basically, I don't know, went to LinkedIn, found the name of somebody who's on the employee list for MGM casinos and hotels, called into the help desk and somehow, convinced the person on the other end of the line that they were actually, somebody they weren't. And then all of a sudden, access was given. And then all of a sudden access was abused and bad things happened from there. I assumed that hotel systems are networked and stuff like that. I did not know, Chip, maybe I just hadn't been paying attention, that like the machines on the casino floor are networked.
Yeah, I was surprised about that too. Apparently, like all the slot machines shut down because the hackers got into everything. The parking garages shut down, like everything was. I mean, either they made a lot of lateral incursions or there's one big single point of failure somewhere in there.
So like that bothers me just from a, I don't know, competitive balance standpoint, right? I thought the whole thing was supposed to be like, I know the house usually wins or always wins, but like it kind of feels like if you can change the rules in the middle of the game, it might be a little unfair. But I digress. That being said, a lot of things networked. This is like the nightmare scenario, right? Where like, everything that could be plugged in is plugged in and also affected. Man, it comes back to a topic that never seems to go away, which is the biggest problem is in between the keyboard and the chair. And the human being, like you cannot train them enough, Chip. Like there is no ceiling to this. Like actually, I would argue you need to continuously put stuff in front of these people to make sure that they're paying attention. I would argue that the person who got bamboozled here, because it was literally just bad guy on the phone with person behind the help desk.
Yeah.
Nothing more than that, right? Probably not working anymore at that place or on suspension.
Yeah, I was going to say, can you imagine being in that person's shoes and, seeing all these news articles, seeing all the social media posts, seeing all the behind the scenes stories and knowing that was you? That was one judgment call on trusting that person on the phone. I mean, oh man, it would be crushing.
And like, here's the thing, like smaller IT service companies and managed services companies, likely there's a, there's a rapport, right? You're dealing with these people on a regular, like you kind of know the names, faces, voices. But once you get to like, I don't know, tens of thousands of people, it's just not going to happen, right? Like everybody's just another number, it's another name when you're at that size. And like simple things could have been put in place to authenticate a person calling in. I mean, we do it all day long. And
Mhm.
I would hope a lot of MSPs have seen this and said, uh-oh, especially when they're bringing in new staff and they're growing, you can't expect every person to recognize every voice, right?
Mhm.
So, I mean, but it just comes down to a little bit of emphasis and continuous training probably stops this one.
Yeah, and but the rumor I've heard, or at least the stories I've read, say that MGM was really behind the times as far as updates, as far as patches, as far as security protocols. They didn't put themselves in a great position from what I've read anyway.
No,
Um,
I mean, listen, and all of that could be true, Chip, but like nobody actually saying that that's the way, right? Like this,
yeah,
basically they gave them the keys and said, have a nice day. And this guy walked through the front door.
yeah. There's never a solution for that. I mean, there is a solution for that. The solution is, handing over the key should not be a one-person job, right? There needs to be checks and balances in there somewhere.
Let me send you a random code. I'm going to send it to your email account. I'm going to send it to your phone number on file. Like, read it back to me, validate some information. But here, I mean, listen, I would say that in the day of, remember that guy from LifeLock? It was like the CEO of LifeLock, I think,
Yeah,
before
yeah.
Symantec bought him. And he would like get one of those trucks and roll it around Times Square with his social security number and say, nobody's going to steal my identity. And like eight people stole his identity like 12 hours later. Like, I argue that, there's a lot of information out there that you're giving away that you probably don't realize on all the different things that you do online. And so could some people figure out your dog's name and like where you're on vacation and
Mhm.
all this other stuff and like put it together? Sure. But, all of that aside, like there are simple technologies like when you call into your bank or PayPal or a lot of different vendors, they usually like, hey, we need to authenticate you. Okay, what do I need to do? Right? Either a series of questions or they send me a random code or something, right? And it's like,
Mhm.
hey, just want to make sure you are who you said you are. That's not unreasonable.
No, I mean, it all comes down to identity. And there's been kind of a weird thing for me because, most of my career was in Atlanta. All of my first MSPs were in Atlanta, big market, millions of people. And then I married a South Carolina girl and I moved up here to Anderson, South Carolina, where the county has about 200,000 people. The city has about 40,000 people. And we're the big town for the surrounding area.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of times there's this argument that, oh, that's MGM. That's, they're going after the big fish. They're going after the big companies, right? I've had two of my customers or friends, customers back when I had my MSP here, friends today, who have had significant incursions, significant breaches that were caught because this is a small town and everybody knows each other. I had one guy who owns a signage company. I would not be a high profile target on anybody's list, but somehow they got into his Gmail account, set up a rule so that all certain incoming emails were not being visible by him, but being sent to the hacker and all that sort of thing. And started, found the bank people that he worked with, started emailing them, asking them to set up a wire transfer. And the only thing that stopped it was the person at the bank said, "That doesn't sound like Glenn," and you picked up the phone and called him. But that only works in a small town. It doesn't work in, and it's not foolproof in a small town, but it doesn't work in a, any kind of, that should not be the final line of defense in any business, put it that way.
I mean, and at the end of the day, that's attacks that that you just kind of painted the picture for. I mean, that happens all day, every day, to the
Oh,
point
yeah.
where like it's the number one thing on the top of any cyber policy, whether even a little cyber policy, this like fraud, like
Mhm.
wire fraud basically by email, whatever. And like simple precautions can be put in place to just trip an alarm. Somebody has to ask a simple question that would be, that would be inserted into the mechanism. And like they just don't. And like we talk all the time about everybody like Microsoft, and they had plenty of problems recently. Let's not forget
Mhm.
about that. Like they, got hit and they exposed a lot of data out there, and their keys got stolen and all this whatever. So like even the big guys are not foolproof by any means, but they'll still tell you that less than 50% of users on Microsoft 365 have MFA enabled, have secure passwords enabled, have password rotation enabled, and like I don't know, man. It's just like I appreciate the convenience factor, but it's become too easy.
Yeah, it's well, yeah, it's become too easy. but also the solutions that people are selling are pitched as being too easy. I mean, I was at ChannelCon last month, and I don't know, there's like 120, 150 vendors there, something like that.
Everybody gets a booth and you get one.
Well, yeah, but at least half the booths were cybersecurity. And most of their pitch was, oh, it's super simple. You click a button, you're all protected, your customers are safe. Sure, that kind of magic exists in the world, but the need is there. And so the opportunity, I don't want to call it snake oil salesman, but there is a lot of opportunity in making those promises. I have no idea how they justify it when the inevitable happens and those customers that they're, keeping safe are breached, but I'm sure there's some kind of explanation for it.
Well, I can tell you this. I mean, when little plumbing company or little accounting firm or little pick your small business America company gets hit, okay, whatever, like it's not okay, whatever to the person that probably lost their life savings, but okay, whatever, it's a no-namer company, to the public's view. But MGM is not a small name. Everybody has been to Vegas or has driven through or has seen a movie with Vegas in the background. It is a recognizable name. It is an avoidable situation. And yeah, I'm sure the MGM probably has plenty of insurance. That's for sure. But I'm sure the next thing that comes out in all of this, Chip, is, hey, well, if you had an account on MGM hotels, then your information was exposed. And then, it just kind of continues on and on and on. And we already know where this, I think, goes to some degree. And like, MGM probably survives, right? I don't think they walk away bankrupt on this, but smaller company probably is not in a good place.
Well, it's interesting too. I mean, kind of encouraging in a way, but by all accounts, MGM didn't pay the ransom, right? That's what this was. It was a ransomware attack, and they didn't pay the ransom, which is why they've been down for over a week now, although apparently most of it is back from what I've seen. But, they're refusing to pay the ransom. Yeah, if they had paid the ransom, and who knows how much it was. I can't wait to see the news reports on what they were asking. I mean, it was certainly north of $1 million, possibly north of $1 billion. I mean, those casinos make a ton of money. They're all about reputation. They're all about customer convenience and customer experience. And if you show up in Vegas for that once in a lifetime or once a year or whatever it is, trip, and you can't play games and you can't bet on sports and you can't even get into your hotel room because the key card doesn't work, I can understand why the criminals felt they had leverage there, right? But MGM took the risk, threw a bunch of humans at it. Apparently they had a lot of staff doing all kinds of manual check-ins, writing down credit card numbers on pieces of paper, apparently, which is a different.
I was going to say, what's your DR strategy for that? The old triple carbon copy swipe with the credit card in the middle,
Yeah, back in my days, we had the credit card slips and they worked just fine. Yeah, it's. But if they make it through it, I hope they learn a lesson, and I hope they start, enforcing better policies. But who knows? They might get through it and say, hey, all right, over the course of a week, we lost this much money. We had to, put this much overtime on the staff. It's still less than the ransom, so let's just keep doing what we're doing.
Well, when we find out what the ransom is, we'll find out. But at the end of the day, part of the problem with the whole ransom thing is you don't even know who you're dealing with on the other side and if they're going to actually do what they say they do, right? Yeah. I mean, it's a problem. They're criminals and they're trying to bamboozle you. And then on the other part, which is hopefully people haven't forgotten, but it's out there, right? Is if you find, if this is a known, do not transfer money to organization on the, government, blacklist, that comes back to you, right? And now you're an even bigger, problem. So, but here's the problem, Chip. A lot of people have paid that ransom. Let's be honest. You just haven't heard about it.
Oh yeah. Well, we hear about it. We do I taught a cybersecurity course years ago, and I wanted to put a face on it. And so the first, 10, 15 minutes of the course, I was showing faces of the hackers and their beachside villas where they live on, some beach in Russia or whatever, and their exotic cars and their yachts and everything else, because clearly it's a money-making venture. But I wanted to, kind of take away the ambiguity of, it's somebody coming through the internet, right? No, it's a real person. There's a real person or a real team of people on the other side. I mean, a lot of these hacker groups have customer service, they have HR departments. I mean, it's a full service business.
I want to know what HR in the hacker group looks like. Like, how do you bring them in and be like, is this like a scene from Swordfish where they're like, hey, I'm going to put a gun to your head, hack this site to see if you can do it. You know, like, I don't know. I want to know.
No, I'm thinking more about the employee who comes in wanting to use their PTO allowance because they're feeling a little burned out. They've been hacking too many people lately. And yeah, I don't know.
I mean, the fact that they're running this thing like a business, just you just not often do you hear these people getting found. That's the problem. And when you do,
Yeah.
they're in a country that you can't even. There's no, what? Let's say if it's a China or North Korea or something like that. Like, what do you do? You got to file. You got to file a lawsuit for somebody that's never gonna. You're never gonna find them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the problem. I mean, the ultimate recourse has to be something governmental or something structural that can block these money transfers to people that, we can't hold accountable.
Yeah. Well, and a lot has been said, like, the federal government here in the US is like, oh, we're going to come out with our own, electronic currency. And it's like, uh-oh, do we really want to go down that road? And I think the Treasury Department set up their own transfer site where you can transfer funds directly through the Treasury instead of through a bank. And like, at some point, maybe we're giving up too much for the government to be able to regulate certain things. I know that's where the cryptocurrencies really became the wild, wild west.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but I think the answer is let's start with educating people on how to do what seem like simple things so that you maybe try and prevent all of this from happening to begin with. I don't know if that's too much to ask for, but
no, I mean, it definitely, it's always got to be about awareness, right? It's always going to be that short between the keyboard and the chair. There's always going to be a human weak link somewhere in the chain. So you're right. Cybersecurity training is always going to be a thing, and it needs to evolve. So like at Bigger Brains, we're mostly training, right? We're mostly training that's sold by MSPs. So like cybersecurity was a big decision for us early on. Like, do we go down that road or not? And we kind of intentionally didn't at first for a couple of reasons. There's companies out there like KnowBe4 and Ningio that really focus on that. They specialize in that. And we felt like that was an area that needed specialization, right? Because there's so many, nuances to it. We're going to let those guys handle that. But we did eventually, because we got a lot of requests from MSP. So we did eventually build out some of our own cybersecurity courses. And the first one that I wrote, I think the original version came out in 2017, and there was an update in 2019, maybe. And just actually 2 months ago, I was taking a look at it because I was asked to, because somebody reported that it seemed outdated. I was like, how can it be outdated? It's timeless, principles of being suspicious and think before you click and all that. And one of the things the course talked about was being wary of fake updates for your Flash or your what was the other one? Flash was the big one. JavaScript or Java updates. Okay, we don't see those anymore. Things have evolved, things have moved on. It's still be suspicious. Yeah, still think before you click, but the examples have changed.
that's fair. I mean, at the end of the day, I think, it's almost the same principles of marketing, right? It's like you're continuously trying to be in front of someone. So when the time comes that they need your product or service, they're like, oh yeah, that's right, these guys do it, right?
Yeah.
In the same token, you're like trying to convince your users to like, hey, pay attention, make sure that you're not doing the wrong thing. You're not going to the wrong places. This is work stuff. Stay off of personal stuff on work systems, stuff like that, right? And like, watch before you click, hover over the link in the email before you click, right? Make sure that it's from the right person. I mean, like, I just feel like these are basic things that kind of are like, all right, well, they've already been talked through. Everybody knows this. And here we are, right? Like just simple things where you're just like, hey, set it and forget it. Just a regular day-to-day mundane task turned into an oops.
That's the hard part, is to keep it. I mean, you've got to have that ongoing training. And that's something we're looking at internally here too, is I've commissioned our content team to build 6 more cybersecurity courses. And their first response was, why do we need 6 courses? And even though it's a lot of the same principles, you got to mix up the storytelling. You got to mix up the examples. You've got to do different formats, because nobody wants to watch the same information over and over again. It just starts to bounce off. You tune out, it's not relevant. So you've got to keep, because this is something like we built a sexual harassment course a few years ago. And a lot of our training content. A lot of our courses are sold by other training companies who also sell sexual harassment courses. And so when we released that one, a lot of them refused to carry that one because, well, we don't want it to compete with ours. And I was like, yeah, but your employee, your customers are doing sexual harassment training every year. They don't want to see the same course every year. Give them a choice, give them something else, keep it interesting, or else you're going to lose them as customers. It's the same thing here. Keep the training interesting, keep it relevant, keep it entertaining enough that it stays top of mind, because it's that, it's when you least suspect it, right? It's that one phone call that comes on, a day 6 months after you had that cybersecurity training, and you got to count on them to remember everything they were supposed to remember.
Let's talk about that for a second, because we've talked to a bunch of people about, like the services that send out the fake spam, right? Like they make it look like Amazon or PayPal or eBay or whatever, LinkedIn. Office 365 is a popular one. And like, like I think once a year is like pretty much the mandate for most of the any of the compliances out there, but like, I feel like to your point, once a year, like a lot happens in a year. Like people just forget things. Like how do you figure out the balance, right? To like keep people continuing, but maybe not too much and maybe not too middle. Where's the middle of the road? How do you figure it out?
Yeah, I don't know that anybody has figured it out, to be honest. I mean, you see a lot of different companies trying different things. There's a lot of either like doing a monthly approach or doing like a management driven approach where like management will choose like a different type of initiative, maybe every quarter that they're pushing out. And then you also see a lot of adaptive type solutions where the training varies based on how the user responds to it, right? So if you send out that fake phishing email and somebody clicked on it, the next training they get is going to be different than the person who didn't click on it, but that way they can keep it going. But you're right. You've got to keep something going throughout the year. I mean, I don't know if it's weekly. I don't know if it's monthly. I don't think it's less than monthly, because there's just too much risk. There's too much, there's too much danger of them becoming complacent and forgetting. And, one click, one phone call, one shared password, and that's all she wrote.
Yeah. I mean, one thing's for sure. MSPs love to resell things, but they forget to do the stuff internally too, right? Like, like the whole, the old shoemaker, shoe, kind of theme. Everybody says, make sure your house is in order before you go and do stuff. And like now more than ever, I think there's a lot of teeth to that. But I don't know how often, and I see it all the time, right? And I try and stay out of them as much as everybody else wants to, right? The Reddits and the Discord Slacks and the Facebook groups and whatever. I feel like a lot of MSPs internally, even their techs don't have a very formal training, right? It's kind of like, hey, sit to the guy next to you, figure it out, you'll get there, right? And it's like, let's just put you on the front lines and see if you can swim, kind of thing.
Yeah, but my first two MSPs, we had no internal training. I mean, granted, this was back in the olden days when we had floppy disks, but even so, I mean, we just kind of counted on people to either come in with whatever knowledge they had from their past jobs and to learn as they went, and that works, to an extent, but to not be aware or to not stay in the loop on everything that's happening in the industry, especially with like the supply chain attacks, the Kaseya attack and things like that. I know way too many MSPs who, if I mentioned that to them, they would not know what I was talking about. And if that's the case, they are opening themselves up to just so much risk. I mean, again, going back to that person at MGM who took the phone call, you don't want to be the MSP who has to call all your customers and say, oh, by the way, all that information you used to have, all the passwords to your servers that we had here, yeah, somebody in Russia has that now, and yeah, you don't want to be that guy.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest, right? Reputation, whether it's the big guys, right, MGM size above, all the way down to the Main Street quasi computer repair shop that also does some IT work. Reputation does definitely hamper whether you're going to get dragged down into it or you're going to actually succeed. Like it can definitely tilt the wind a little bit against you or for you, right? Like if you did good stuff, then obviously good news always travels a lot slower than bad news. The problem is the bad news gets reported on because everybody just for some reason loves to watch the car crash for some reason.
Well, and we don't talk about the cars that didn't crash. We don't talk about the attacks that didn't happen because it's not newsworthy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. And let me go a step further, right? Like, I said in the beginning of this, right? It's like, hey, there's 230 events here in the US in 2023. We're not done yet. A lot of people are like, hey, like, I don't want to hear the next vendor pitch. I want to be educated, right? Because like, how do I keep up with what's next? I think there, like back to you learn the hard way or you proactively try and learn. There's, I don't know, somebody said 70, every number is different, 70,000 MSPs here in North America. There is, or what is the formal training path, Chip? Like certifications, like, hey, just keep going through certification training and go through that. Like there is not, to my knowledge, is a CompTIA. Like, what is the continuing education path here? I don't think there is a formal path.
Yeah, it's funny. I've never seen anybody that's found one. Because I would say people may disagree. I don't think there's any certification that would prepare anybody for working in an MSP. I mean, yeah, A plus, Security Plus is a foundational maybe. They've gotten a lot better. Back when I was running my first couple of MSPs, I would kind of joke about the A plus and the Network Plus back then because they were so disconnected from the reality that we saw. They've gotten better, but still it's such a, it's like learning your letters before you write a novel, right? Okay, yeah, you kind of need to know that, but it's there's more than that. It's kind of funny. I've not really seen any of the big guys. There's no ConnectWise or Data or anybody that's really done a lot with that. Now there are a lot of smaller players. The MSP University, Carl Palachuk I think has one, IT Service Provider University. There's groups like that. It's mostly the peer groups, right? It's mostly whether it's an event like a ChannelCon or like a IT Compass or something like that, where you get plugged in with a community of other like-minded MSPs and kind of learn from the people around you, which I think is good for the owner of the MSP, right? But it's rare for the employees of the MSP to go to those kind of events. So, to your point, training the actual employees themselves, I don't know a good solution for that. I mean, bigger brains, we're designed to train end users. We can do that all day long. And I've been thinking about that a lot because that was my career with computer troubleshooters. I spent 13 years teaching people how to run an MSP business, but that was also, years ago. I haven't seen anybody else doing it. I don't know if you've seen anybody that's doing a better job with it.
I feel like there's dribs and drabs, in different areas, but I wouldn't say that there's a formal path, right? You almost need to like take pieces from 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 places and kind of merge them together to try and create your own, right, internally. But to that point, how often are the internal employees at whatever level, like it's more of an apprentice type learning scenario than it is I'm sending you to an actual formal course, right? 101, 102, 103. And like the certifications even I feel are a little bit more vendor driven even, right? Like they're
Yeah.
not holistic in how they're delivered. They're like, hey, learn how to configure our appliance, learn how to configure our SaaS solution. You're certified in, Joe Tech, right? But like, what does that actually mean? So I don't know, like the Microsoft certifications back in the day used to mean something. I don't think they mean as much. Like now it's like, I'm a master Microsoft MCSE, this type, like, I don't think that holds the weight it used to hold anymore.
No, yeah, not as you're right. The certifications, except for the CompTIA ones, are all vendor specific, and a lot of them are more enterprise focused, not really SMB focused. There used to be, like this. I was trying to find a different one, but this is like a Harry Brailsford book on making it in small business from back in the day. There's a few of those out there, but keeping books up to date is just hard to do anymore. So I think it really needs to be more live communities like this one, live events, going in the channel. There's a whole lot of virtual stuff on social media and webinars nowadays, but it's not organized, it's not structured, but it's where the most relevant information is, I think.
Yeah. And I think that's part of the, we've had the Keith Nelsons on here before and other MSPs. They come on here. They're like, You know, like if you ever get yourself into a legal issue, right? They're like, who made you, you know, who gave you, you know, you're a professional IT service guy, you know, like, you know, back to the whole, hey, you know, is there some sort of just like the lawyer, just like the doctor, just like the plumbers, you know, like where
Mhm.
is the you want, you know, you're approved, right? You've gone through the, you know, stamp and you're good, right? I don't think, again, that doesn't exist at the moment. And everyone that's been talking about it so far seems to be talking about it from hey, well, the government's got to smack down at some point, and you know, this is all going to
Mhm.
come to a head. But I don't know. Like, if you go to a 4-year college right now, undergrad, and you come out with your IT business degree or systems admin degree or whatever it is, you can call it whatever you want. I don't even know if that's, what does that mean? Like,
Mhm.
you know, like that doesn't necessarily mean that you know anything. It just means that you tested well.
Yeah, I think about when we were starting computer troubleshooters. I still had my first MSP in Atlanta. It was Chip Tech Computer Services back then, and we had about, I don't know, 10 or so people on staff. And so the new franchisees who were looking at getting started, I'd bring them by my operation and show them, show them what we did and everything. And I remember second or third guy that joined us, his name was Rod, good guy. He had been working in IT at an enterprise level for years at that point, and this is 1999, 2000. It's a while ago. But I brought him into my service center, and English was not his first language, so communication was sometimes a little bit of a challenge. But I said, so, bottom line, and I kind of, waved out to all my techs working at their desks. I said, how much of this do you think you can do? He said, oh, I can do all of this, no problem. All of this, no problem. I said, okay, good. I want you to spend the day shadowing my senior tech. You're gonna go out on some service calls. You're gonna meet some customers, but go with him for a day and then meet with me back in the afternoon. Comes back that afternoon. I met with him and he said, "Oh, I didn't know any of that." It's just too different. It's again, the fundamentals are the same, but the way, the rhythm and flow of how things work in a small business situation, if you're looking for the kind of structure and policies and things that happen in enterprise, they don't exist, right? If you're looking for the kind of standardization that you can get in a large company, they don't exist. But also just the interactions with the customers. I mean, you know how it is. The diversity of the kinds of situations you go into, the diversities of the equipment you're going to be working with. It's a very different world. I'm not seeing anybody successfully train on that yet or do any kind of certification on that yet.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. At the end of the day, one thing's for sure, back to like, hey, you know, the MSP's world can be made either harder or easier by conditioning your end customer to
Mm,
do X, right? And I think, you know, that's kind of part of the problem, right? You know, I don't know if the IT business is viewed as a commodity, you know, and they're just like, well, hey, listen, you know, if we can't figure it out, call, you know, like just call the phone number, right? And it's like, hey, you know, do you know how to press the power button on your computer? We all have those funny stories, right? Where it's like, you know, the one I always bring up is like, oh yeah, my coffee cup holder is broken, and I'm like, huh, what? What you want me for? And it was like the CD-ROM drive coming out of the front of the
I
computer.
remember, yeah.
Like, what? You know what I mean? So like everybody has that story, but like how much of, you know, like to the point where people are like, oh, we're gonna put bots in place, Chip, because like the answer is the same every time. These people just
Mm.
need to hear from somebody else for some reason. Like how much of it now is just then customer, then user in the chair just doesn't retain information for some reason.
Yeah, I wonder if AI is going to be able to help with any of that. Like it would be great if we had a second guesser AI that every time you clicked a link, the AI would look at it and say, is George really clicking on what he thinks he's clicking on? And it's like Clippy. The new version of Clippy is going to pop up and say, I see you're sending money to a hacker. Did you mean to be sending money to a hacker? And I don't know, maybe.
No, I mean, and well, but that this is what we're like real world scenario, right? The bigger companies, and I mentioned this in a couple past episodes, but it's worth mentioning it here, effectively are trying, you know, they're like, all right, we're having a hard time finding more people to, you know, to maintain the call volumes, maintain the customer service value,
Mm,
you know, level, stuff like this. So we're just gonna replace the frontline worker with automation, right? It's no
mhm.
different than McDonald's saying, hey, we're just going to reduce the number of people in the McDonald's and we're just going to have you order yourself. And then when it's done, you got to go pick it up yourself. And then like, really, there's only somebody in the kitchen, maybe like nobody's out
Yeah.
front taking your order anymore. And maybe to the extreme level, I think they have one in Texas now, like the whole thing's automated. There is
Mhm.
nobody there, right? It's a computer running the joint. So at what point, like, like we keep on hearing, like, does that personalization, does that human being interface, does that level of experience, like, is that just about to be ripped out here? Does the MSP's like kind of bread and butter frontline revenue generator, disappear?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I had to go to the bank yesterday. I needed to get a letter. A new customer in Europe needed a letter for tax purposes. Had to be on the bank's letterhead, right? So, I mean, I do all my banking online now. I don't. I go to an actual branch maybe once a year.
Yeah.
So but in my mind, I still remember how the branches used to be, right? You walk in, you're greeted. There's like bankers over here, tellers over here. I walk in and there's two tellers and that's it. And the place is empty, of course, because nobody comes to a real bank anymore. And the teller, called me over and I went up and explained to her what I was trying to do, and she couldn't do it. They don't have that capability anymore. So yeah, the world has gotten more automated in that regard, but now there is that customer service piece missing that, you don't really miss it until you need it, you know? And I don't know that any industry's really figured out the solution to that. I mean, there's got to be a happy medium somewhere where you can automate enough to be profitable, but keep the customer service piece to keep your customers happy. And maybe AI can help with that. I don't know. The next few years are going to be interesting.
Yeah, the AI thing I feel is in the wild, wild west right now. I don't
Mhm.
think anybody, like, there's a lot of ideas of grandeur, right? Like, I think I read an article saying they might have to rip up Chat GPT and start all over again because it wasn't built securely. And
Mm.
so they're having all of these, kind of leaks out from, the system, and they don't realize it until it's done. I don't know. I mean, I think, it may take a little bit longer for the thing to mature a little bit, right? And to really see where it goes. Um, I still think, and you've always heard the stories, Chip, right? And no different than a computer troubleshooters franchise, right? Like, how much can you do with one, two, or three people, right? Can you do a couple $1 million of business without having to
Mm.
add 10 people? There are some people that figured it out, right? Like, it's
Mm.
not totally new. Like, if you can automate the things that are time burning, you could run a couple $1 million MSP with maybe a couple people, two, three people.
Yeah, I mean, it's always been there in specific verticals, specific niches with people with specific talents. The opportunity's always been there. The question is there a way to build some tools, build a platform to make it more accessible to, more MSPs? I don't know.
Yeah. And I do think that as much as the remote thing has really like been driving the day to day, there is still something to, are you local enough that if you needed to show up in the front door, you could? I'm not saying you should be rolling the truck every hour of every day, but like,
Mhm.
there's some level of comfort that if something bad happened, you could have somebody walk in the door. And I feel like no matter what venture backed company is buying up MSPs everywhere, if the localish feeling kind of goes away and it becomes a little bit more of a regional or national model, like, some people just don't like that.
Yeah, it's another area that I've been watching for a while. There's always there's that promise that if you're non-local, you could structure it where like there's standby equipment, right? And so if the end user's hardware is totally kaput, you could walk them through, or the tech on the phone or tech online could walk them through grabbing a standby unit, plugging in an Ethernet cable, and downloading all their backups into it, and presto, they're back up and running again. I've never seen it really well executed. There's always just too many things. Like, okay, that's great for the laptop, but what happens if it's the access point in the ceiling that's kaput? Okay, now you got a whole floor of the building with no Wi-Fi. How do you're not gonna walk an end user through getting on a chair, getting up in the ceiling, and swapping out an AP. So yeah, I don't know. There's definitely always going to need. I say definitely. I shouldn't say definitely on anything in this business. There will probably always be a need for a local pair of hands, a local pair of smart hands. Yeah, you got to have it.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, real quick on bigger brains, like how MSPs have adopted it and are selling it, like I'm sure there's a lot of tracking in your business, right? Which videos are more popular than others? How many people are adopting it versus not? Like what are the more successful MSPs that have adopted bigger brains seeing, right? Like what's the value prop that seems to be hitting more than not?
But the biggest value prop probably for us is when you're onboarding an M365 customer for the first time. So you can hand them off. We've got like 100 courses on different Microsoft 365 aspects. You can give them learn Teams in 30 minutes, learn OneDrive in 30 minutes, learn Outlook Online in 30 minutes. Bam, an hour and a half later, they're good to go with those. Hopefully, at least the basics. And if they want to dive in, there's more of those. But it depends on the customer. We've got some customers who get really into like the Microsoft Excel training, especially if they're in finance or project management, something like that. And then the weird thing is we've like business soft skills is kind of a sideline for us, right? Like that sexual harassment course that I mentioned, even the cybersecurity courses. But like a couple of months ago, we have a course on persuasion. And for whatever reason, the persuasion course, one of our oldest courses, it's from 2014. And it was just through the roof for some reason. I think there were a couple of businesses that like made it mandatory for their employees for some reason. So it might have been skewing the usage numbers, but it was number one course for about a month, which was very surprising for a course that old.
Persuasion. Sell me this pen.
Technically, it's called Persuasion, the Art of Communication.
Okay. All right. Although, if you could sell me this, that's so funny. I can't tell you how many times I would pull that joke, but yeah, some people are very good at convincing other people to do stuff. That's for sure, right? Some people are not. I guess it's just a personality thing. Zoom, you came from a franchise model. You're working with MSPs of all different shape sizes, I'm sure now, and even international. So, welcome to the everybody's doing the same thing in a different currency. Let's just fast forward. Let's not even go too far into the future. It's 2023. Let's fast forward to September of 2026, 3 years from now.
Okay.
If you were to guess on some trends that might be happening in IT MSP land, what is it? What are you thinking in the next 3 years?
Wow. That's an interesting question. So I think it's a safe bet that cybersecurity is still going to be big, unfortunately. Unless I remember this is how smart I am, or how smart I am not. I remember very distinctly standing on stage at a computer troubleshooters event, probably 2005, 2006. Actually, it would have been 2006. So we were introducing our managed services plans. And part of my pitch towards moving to managed services for our franchisees was that so much of our service calls were virus based. And that I was convinced that there was going to come a time when we would have the computer virus problem solved and we wouldn't be making as much revenue from fixing basically hacker incidents of the day. And so that's kind of true. We don't have viruses in the same sense anymore, but that security threat that was a virus and then became malware and today is ransomware or phishing or whatever, that's going to continue to evolve. I think AI is actually going to help with that. I mean, the biggest red flag, right, with phishing emails right now is the bad English, and AI can fix that for you in a snap. So, yeah, I think cybersecurity is still going to be number one. I think, we will probably still have the same staffing and operational challenges we have today, meaning finding the right people to do the right jobs in the right locations. So, yeah, I think there will continue to be a need for training. Will we have solved the MSP staff training issue by then? I don't know. I would like to, hey, I'd like to say it's happened. I'd like to say the bigger brains did it. I don't know. It changes too fast.
No, that's fair. I mean, one thing is for sure. I've come to this realization after, talking to a ton of people here, is that technology seems to continue in a kind of parallel course to the rest of the world for some reason, right? Like, I'm not saying it's not totally affected by what happens in the larger universe that we live in, but like, it does continue to like take its own path, right? And like grow and evolve regardless of what's happening in the world around us to some degree. But it definitely continues to be reinvented a bit, right? Yeah, there's always new stuff, but there's always people going backwards saying, let's make the old stuff that's been happening over and over again a little bit faster, a little bit more efficient, a little bit, you know what I mean? Like it just, you know, there's always that kind of innovation spark that continues down the path. So I'm curious to see where all of this stuff that we're starting to see come on the scene really for the first time, right? Whether you want to call it generative AI, whether you want to call it automation, machine learning, all this, whatever, how that affects people in our sandbox. Cause like, you know, like even DevOps or even controlling the RMMs that we've all been sold over the last decades. I mean, it just seems like it kind of hit a glass ceiling, right? Because either you didn't have the know-with-all inside your company to make it go further than what it did, or like new technologies are coming in to kind of displace what we've been doing.
Yeah, it's, you know, they talk about these image AIs that can, you feed them like MRIs and X-rays, and they can do a better job than humans of spotting abnormalities, right? Spotting things that might be cancer, might be a problem. It seems like there's an opportunity there somewhere from a, you know, SIEM SOC kind of basis to have an AI that's looking at the activity of all your endpoints and maybe looking at your network traffic. I mean, if we had some tool that could kind of look at all that together and say, yeah, this is normal, but here's some weird stuff over here. We think you need to dig more into that. I feel like those tools are maybe 3 or 4 years away. So maybe that'll be a 2026 kind of a thing. But that's the kind of place that I would see AI taking us towards. And but like I said, kind of the challenge is, I think AI and pick any new technology, it's always the same. But AI today, it can help the good guys, it can help the bad guys. So as a good guy, we kind of have to lean into, you know, finding those new tools who are taking advantage of it, learning how to use it, successfully, to match wits with the bad guys who are going to be using it to outwit the, you know, existing tools we already have.
100%. One thing's for sure. If your military $150 million jet disappears in South Carolina and nobody knows where it went, the world might have bigger problems, but I don't know.
That's yeah. That they did find the wreckage today. I saw it in the news just before this, but yeah. How do you,
You know, not to be silly, but it's like, hey, have you seen this jet? Please call. And it's like, how do you lose that?
that's literally what they did. It's like they're going on telephone poles, you know, stapling up pictures. Have you seen this? Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, that's wild. That'll be a story that's just, you know, like I appreciate there was a malfunction and the dude in the jet like pulled the ripcord and like, you know, jumped out, but like, didn't this thing create like a smoke and you know, like how did you, I don't know.
Doesn't it have GPS, you know, AirTag, something?
Yeah, like it's funny in southeastern PA here, we had a guy like escape the prison, right? Like straight out of the
Oh yeah.
prison break. And like, you know, for 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, this guy was like, couldn't find him. You know, they had everybody, right? You know, like FBI and state police, whatever. And I'm just like, that's a guy. That's like one guy in a sea of many, many people, right? Like this is a jet. I don't exactly park that in my backyard. So like, how did you lose that? I don't know. I digress.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll put the air tags on. They heard this podcast and they're going to go invest in some of those.
So everybody downloads the Find My Jet app, and then you're walking around on the beach trying to figure out.
It reminds me of that. I watched a Netflix documentary on the kid with the Pepsi points in the jet.
I saw that. Yeah.
And I was like, I guess I missed this whole story back when it was happening in real time. But I was like, I would have been pissed off if I was that kid too. They definitely had him. They just went too far.
Yeah. Yeah. That was a cool story. I vaguely remember it from childhood. I don't remember the whole, you know, lawsuit trying to get the Harrier and all that stuff, but yeah, it's a cool story.
Yeah, I'll take the 10 million and walk away.
Yeah.
I think that was
I'd sub.
bet. Yeah, I think that was a pretty good bet. Chip, how do people find more information about your company, your offering, how you help MSPs and all that jazz?
Bigger Brains is getbiggerbrains.com, but our super secret MSP program is biggermsp.com.
There you go. Go check out biggermsp.com and see if this is something that your customers could save. Well, like hour and a half of videos could save you how many help desk tickets? I got to think dozens and dozens and dozens of help desk tickets per person. You add it all up, time is money. I think that's the math right there. Are we going to see you at any events between now and the end of the year? I know we got some of these big ones coming up.
I'm doing James Kernan's Millionaire Mastermind in a couple of weeks, or next week, actually. I haven't done that before, so I'm looking forward to that. My team's going to be at ASCII in December, and I think there's going to be an IT Compass event, I think in October, that we're going to do.
Okay, cool. We love running into people in the wild, right? That's where you can actually have a beer and not like, do the whole online happy hour thing. If they're still happening, by the way, I don't know.
They were never happening. They had them. They were not happening.
Yeah, I agree. This session was recorded, everyone. You'll find it at mspinitiative.com under sessions. Once I'm posting it, should be a little bit later on today, maybe. But we've talked to Chip a few times now. He has a pretty cool background, and history. So if you go back and listen to one of the earlier ones, you'll get a little bit more ideas of like Chip's journey, right? Which I think is a cool story into itself. But otherwise, check out biggermsp.com. See that? I got it. It's now committed to memory. And I'm sure if you drop Chip a message, if you had any questions, it's easy to find.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, everyone. And I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks, Chip. Talk soon, my friend.
Thanks, George. Thanks, everybody.
All right. See ya.
Bye-bye.